Hello everyone, welcome to installment number 2 of the new Pregnant Hag podcast. And I'll just give you some background on this new podcast. So this series of interviews started off as my offerings for a project called Healing Wise, which is all about providing spiritual and shamanic outreach work for children in need. And there is a closed group on Facebook. I'll put the link in the show notes where you can find us. We're a closed community who do spiritual outreach work for children in need. And that remains a topic very close to my heart, but I've also shifted the focus to my sessions. I also want to talk about a wider range of topics and have a wider range of guests. So I've started the Pregnant Hag podcast on YouTube. It's a video podcast, as you can see. It also feels important to me to share images. Like today, we're going to look at art. And my mission vision for this podcast is to offer spiritual perspectives and unique content which will help people navigate the road to wellness and wholeness on the level of soul. And of course, especially content that honors elders or our inner crone or inner elder. That means the wise person we are always becoming, be it if we're male or female or however we identify, is like our inner old wise person, our inner sage. Meaning that we can then act in turn as a compassionate mentor for others. And that's especially needed for young people growing up in a challenged and very challenging world. And that is one of my passions. So that's the podcast. And my special guest for today is Ciara Roberts. Hello, Ciara. How are you?
Hello, Imelda. I'm doing really well. I'm so happy to be here on this very exciting podcast with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to be here today. I'll just give people your short bio. So Kiera Roberts is a yoga teacher, a naturopathic nutritionist, a writer, a creative and inspirational speaker, and she has a passion for holistic health. She also has a love for exploring many modalities, including the Peruvian Curendero, living embodiment, and the fascinating neuroscience of our modern age. Her business, Wholly Aligned, has been fertile soil to understand her own personal evolution. It was set up almost 10 years ago, and that followed a period of over 12 years in banking. Kiera specializes in kidneys and kidney care, having for 40 years lived her own experiences and had her own kidney adventures, about which we'll talk in a moment. She's actually had 2 kidney transplants. Kiera loves sharing the power of breath, movement, feeling, and deep self-enquiry to help others live in sacred alignment with their whole selves. And her mission is to help thousands of people across the world awaken their inner physician. And we really have one, don't we, Kiera? We have an inner physician.
We really do, Imelda, and I think it's often, to your point of the work that you're doing with sacred art and with children, growing up in, as you say, very challenging times, it's often overridden, isn't it, that this idea that the solutions are all inside of us can feel very alienating if we haven't had the chance to explore the rich terrains of our inner world. So I really believe it. And it's actually some work that I do with medics as well, that, yeah, you're a physician in this earth walking life, but you also are allowed to turn inwards and awaken your inner physician. So it really applies across the board and embraces what it really means to be autonomous and sovereign in our own selves.
Because having done some of that work myself, I've worked the concept, the inner physician, and taken clients and students through that. But what I find is so very empowering, because the moment you can do that, you have both perspectives on the table. You can consult mainstream physicians, and I see doctors. People sometimes think because I'm a shamanic healer that I would never go and consult a medical professional. That's not the case. I go and consult medical professionals because sometimes that's just what I need. They have the expertise. But I always marry that by also consulting my spirit allies and my inner physician, or even just sort of actually traveling to a part of my body and asking that part of my body what's going on. Like I've had dialogues with, you know, whatever the issue is, like with my own foot or with my own heart or with my own, well, not kidneys, I think, but I've been to other parts of my body. And then to let that part of the body speak, and then, you know, to put the two perspectives on the table. This is what the doctor says, and this is what my body says. And now how do I move forward?
Yes, and that to me is the true integrated approach and the holistic approach, that it's not denying anything that is of service. It would be ridiculous for me, and this is, you know, it does concern me that there is a lot of polarity when it comes to discussing health. It's very nuanced, it's very complex. It would be ridiculous for me to say, oh, you know, don't worry about what the doctors say, because I've had to rely for long periods of time on a dialysis machine, for example, or the intricacy of a transplant surgeon and the team and all of the things that come with that. Yet to your point of, we can go into the somatics of what is it to actually feel into these parts of us, because we're not taught this stuff necessarily growing up. And part of your healthcare team is absolutely your spirit allies, and all of that juicy, rich stuff. Yeah,
exactly. And yeah, to get both perspectives on the table, it's such a good way to move. So Kiera, today we are going to be talking about kidney and kidney donation, and we're also going to be talking about art, because I noticed that you have a painting behind you, and we will get to that. Yeah. So a few months ago, you decided to commission a painting, and it's not just any old painting. Would you like to tell the audience why and how you came to commission a painting?
Oh my gosh, I would love to share it, and hopefully it ignites some sparkiness in your listeners. So, I mean, I've known you for a number of years now, Imelda, which I'm so grateful for, and I really value that. And having found you and the work that you're doing, that we both are in South London, and it was very amazing for me to find somebody like you. And I came to see you for a one-to-one session initially, and then did some of your group work as well, which I really benefited from. But I remember even in your own home, you have, you know, a lot of art and, you know, all this color and this expression, and it's very clearly a big part of you. But in terms of how the painting came to be, it was because we've been in touch for a while. I'm on your newsletter, and you sent out this newsletter, which you always write so beautifully, and I really love that. But you had put a picture that you called Bear Me, and it was...
May I pause here for a moment and do a screen share? Shall we bear?
Yes, absolutely.
While you talk, so
bring it up.
Let me sort out a screen share. And here it is.
So voila, this is what beamed out when I opened up that newsletter on that day. And it was just, I mean, just look at it. It's like, oh my gosh, there's people in a boat with some bears, and there's some whales swimming around. And I've deliberately worn my whale pendant, which my dad got from, we can't even remember where he got it from on one of his travels. He used to work for the Foreign Office. But, and as an aside, it was something that I took when I went to have my second kidney transplant with me. So the medicine of whales is something that was already part of my journey. So that really spoke to me. And, you know, kidneys representing the element of water, it's only, you know, on past reflection. I wasn't having all of these thoughts necessarily when I was seeing it. As we know, it's layered and nuanced. But I just fell in love with this as a piece of art, and I expressed that to you. But you'd made it very clear it's not for sale. But you know, you gave me the option, because as one door closes, oh no, heartbroken, it's not for sale, and then another opens, but I can do a commission for you, which just opened the door to, oh my gosh, what a magical thing to have a commissioned painting by somebody who has the awareness of the deeper aspects of spirituality, because you know there's no dialogue in the orthodox medicine field around the spirituality of kidney donation or any donation, in my experience, and that, you know, that's fine, but we're able to do that in our own spaces and places. So that's how the seed was sown, and then it kind of turned into this exchange that was on email between the two of us, and that you knew my medical history in terms of having, at that point it would have been probably, so I had my second kidney transplant in October 2019, so it would have been, it's still over a year since I'd had the surgery when we started to talk about this. But as I began to have, and this is the benefit of some of the questions that you were asking me, that it was a flow. So it wasn't, you know, it was a becoming of a dialogue, a becoming of a piece of art. That, you know, who do you want in the boat with you? Oh, well, okay, I want my donor, you know, because I was navigating quite a lot of trickiness with him. He'd given me the challenge of a virus to work with, and what that was then bringing up for me. But it felt like, all I know about him, when you get the call for cadaveric transplants, you don't know when that's going to come. It's an unknown timeline, as opposed to people who have living organ donations. But it came with just the information of, because the ethics and confidentiality, of course you can't know loads of detail, because you know that person and family needs to be protected. But all I knew was that he was 25 and he was killed in a car accident. So he really felt like, my first kidney I called Kenny, and the second kidney, soon after I'd had the surgery, I felt very, very maternal towards him. So I would probably be in Earth years about 18 years older than him at the time of the surgery. But I had a real maternal feeling towards him that was really felt. I really felt that. And so I called him my boy. And he sits on the right side of my iliac crest. So kidneys are put into the front body, you know, anatomically. Native kidneys, of course, are the organs in the back body. But that was really powerful to have a depiction. And this is, you know, I'd really love to hear from you, Imelda, on, you know, there he is with me, him and me holding hands, and how I've got the painting is that I'm on the top, almost like I'm in the earth realm, and he's in the upside down now. He's in the different spaces and places. So it's just this idea of connection beyond really the space-time continuum, which is kind of extraordinary. I've never met this person in human form, and yet part of him is now part of me, which is very beautiful and magnificent, and I really honor that and honor him for what he gifted me. So to have that, and then the bears, the comfort of the bears. Yeah, I'd love to hear about your process of, because
I'm just going to try and turn the painting for a moment, because it's actually a non-directional painting. You can view it from all directions and it works. So let me try something. So like, this is the way it's up on your wall right now. And this also reflects what you said about that you're obviously here with us in this world, and he is now in the other world, but he still very much exists, and he's giving you this huge gift of a kidney. So if you look at the painting this way, he is like, you know, in this watery world, in the other realm, and you are still in this world. But also in the painting, you're holding hands and you're in the boat together, because this is like a partnership. And there were a number of things, because I was very excited about working on your painting. I can also say that your painting is much larger than the original painting. The original painting, my husband is very much in love with it. So it's up in our bathroom. So he sits in the bath and he dreams of it. So, but you know, the original painting is probably a third of the size of what you have there. Your painting is really large. So, and that was very interesting, because I've made a smaller version, and now we agreed you wanted the largest canvas I had in stock. So that's going to be a large one. And then as soon as I started working on it, as a painter, of course, I know, as someone who makes sacred art, is that every painting has its own indwelling spirit. And you can't, and this is also why you can't just sell copies of a painting, because like every painting acquires its own indwelling spirit. So as soon as I started working on your painting, I was still working the same concept for a painting, but what came forward and also was making it for you. So your spirit allies started arriving. So the process was quite different from making the first painting. So one of the things that happened, I'll flip it upside down one more time. Let's see. Is that in the first painting that we have, the bear is a polar bear. And in your painting, I started painting in what I thought was going to be the polar bear. And this bear was really pushing back and said, well, look, I'm not a polar bear. I'm really a spirit bear. I thought, okay. So back to Kiera again. So I sent you an email and said, you know, this bear, I think, is it a polar bear? It shows every sign of being a spirit bear. And like, what did you think when that email came in?
I loved it. And this is the beauty of just being, you know, this idea of spirit-led art and a spirit-led life, that we tap into this more and more. So when I got it, and I also love that you will always go that extra mile in terms of information. So, you know, here's some information about the spirit bear and where they hang out, that it is actually a real bear. I think is it a white brown bear?
Yeah, it is like a brown bear that is born with like a pigment variation. So it's kind of like an albino brown bear. So spirit bears do look quick. They more have the posture of a brown bear. I mean, polar bears are slightly more elongated in profile. So it really is a brown bear. And also they're not completely white. They're more kind of a cream color like they are here in this painting. And then in places where they live, so in the far north of Canada, the First Nations people there see them as, you know, like very much connected to the spirit world. They're like guides that come forward when we make the transition into the spirit world. Like they call them spirit bears for that reason. And I thought, wow, we're making a painting that has one person in this world and another person who made you a gift as he made his way, well, sadly and tragically, to the spirit world. So it seemed quite appropriate to me that it wasn't a polar bear, but a spirit bear, sorry, holding your donor.
And it really resonated. And I think there is, to your point of the smaller picture that you have, that your husband likes to gaze upon in his bath, you can tell the difference between the you know, how the polar bear presents, and that you as an artist really captured that, because I love it. It's just this, you know, this hugging in and this tender embrace for both of us. But the spirit bear, that it just felt so resonant when I saw that, and it was just like, yes, let's let the spirit bear be born into the painting.
And I was quite relieved, because this spirit bear, you know, the spirit of the spirit bear was already there. And I really don't fancy like painting over him and forcing him to become a polar bear. So I was quite relieved when you say, no, that's fine. I'm happy to roll with that. I thought, oh, like phew, because he clearly wants to be there. And let's see, I'm going to flip it one more time, because as I said, it is a non-directional painting. Because I think we have another guest in the painting, don't we, here, you know?
We do.
Here, Kiera?
There's so much that so this is actually a big piece, and for people to, you know, we've all been through such transformation in this time, in the, you know, the pandemic, and what that's catalyzed for all of us being in our own context. But for me, probably over the past 6 to 8 months, I just had this yearning to create almost this oceanic Venusian space in my lounge. So what my lounge looked like last summer, as an example, is not what it looks like today. So I had watched, somebody had, from my community yoga class, sent me a note saying, oh, you know, I think you'll really love this. And it was a clip of this film called My Octopus Teacher, which I highly recommend people watch. It was so magical. It's basically, and there's again, it's this resonance that it's a documentary film about this guy who swims off the Cape Coast of South Africa, and that's my birthland. I was born in South Africa. Africa lives in my heartbeat. It grew me well, it grew me strong. And this this journey of my octopus teacher is this man starts to dive, free dive with this octopus every day and commits to doing it for a year. You know, what will happen if I do this for a year? And the profound experience that he had with it. But it also, for me, it's like, what do we really know? I mean, there's this whole world that goes on in the sea kelp forest off the coast of the Cape. What do we really know? And the absolute extraordinary intelligence of this wonderful octopus and her wisdom, her capacity to adapt, and that, you know, that the octopus is that shapeshifter. So I loved that she wanted to come into the painting, and I know that you're not someone who watches a lot of television, which I really admire, yet you still went the extra mile to watch my octopus teacher and brought it to life here in the sea kelp forest.
It took a while because some of my friends and colleagues, my teacher colleagues on Facebook, had said, oh, this is like the film of the year, you have to see this, it's on Netflix. And then I forgot about it again because I don't watch TV. I stopped watching TV when my first son was born because I figured that I needed to free up time for the important things in life, and that some things had to go if I was to continue painting, you know, while having small children. So it was a choice I made. But then I don't know how, we were in a dialogue about it. You wrote in and said, Imelda, have you seen this film? It's extraordinary. And then because it's on Netflix, I don't know how Netflix operates. I literally don't know where the on or off button on our TV is, because it's really for our children. And I don't even know if it still has an on or off button or if it's all in remote control. So it took me a few months, and you said it a few times, say it's worth it. You know, if you can see it, you know, try to see it. And then I had one of our teenage sons at home, and I said, look, when you have a moment, could you rig this up for me? And it took him like 3 minutes, and he had it up on screen. So I did cinema night in our own home, and I watched this film. My husband watched it too, or started watching, but he had to leave halfway through. He got too scared of the sharks. It's a bit extraordinary for someone who sailed across the Atlantic and has had all these sort of adventures on the water. And we sailed in waters where there were pirates. My husband is not afraid of any of that, but this notion that something might happen to the octopus because of the sharks, he couldn't handle that. So he shot out of the room, but I stayed. You know, it was like, you know, it was quite scary. I mean, I found it quite difficult to watch the shark scenes, but then also it is the cycle of life. And also like how clever she is. As you say, she's the shapeshifter, and the tricks and the camouflage she uses to outsmart the sharks. It's an extraordinary thing to watch. So anyway, and I think I watched that was just a few weeks before we agreed I was going to be making you this painting. And while working on it, and you had sort of said that, you know, your lounge was turning into a kelp forest. And then I had a dream where I was visiting you because of lockdown, I've not been to your house yet, but I know I'm going to have a cup of tea there. Yes. And I was in this room where I was visiting you. We were having tea in your lounge, and it was that blue color you see behind you, and it was like filled with water, but you could still walk around it, like you could breathe normally, and you could sit on a chair and not float off. And there were like all of these fishes, and the octopus was there. And then I thought, oh, here's like another dream, because I paid close attention to my dreams. And it was very clear that the octopus who dies at the end of the movie of my octopus teacher, she asked to swim forever in your painting. So like the spirit bear, she was asking to come in. And I didn't ask for your permission for that, because you had recommended the film in the first place. I thought, you'll just receive your painting and there will be another like guest, not imposter, but there will be another character in there. So we have her here. Hope people can see the cursor. She's here at the very top, swimming forever in her kelp forest.
It's just so beautiful, and I really value being able to even, you know, have this space with you to articulate these things, because it's not often we have the opportunity to go into this level of depth, and it does, you know, it stirs a lot of emotion in me, that I hadn't realized the depth of that dream, that she, you know, she wanted to come in and live forever in the painting. It's so moving and it's so magnificent, and it brought me such joy to see her in the you know, the great unveiling that we did. So in terms of collecting the painting, that it felt, because it was such a process, and I was often thinking of you and imagining you in your process of, oh, you know, is the painting out on a big table, or is it on
An easel,
an
Kiera.
easel?
The easel.
That's
Too large to work on it on a table.
I know, but that's the image I had. Isn't it funny that it was just on a big table? And yeah, because I was so drawn to your point that I wanted it to be big. It was like this wall was waiting for this painting. And you know, having had previously cream colored walls, and then just wanting the teal, the ocean, and like, yes, as this painting wants to now sail on the oceanic wall. But it really felt, because it was so potent and so sacred, you know, that big part of your work is that the sacredness of art, sacred art. My sister and I are very close, so she has a set of wheels. She's got a family, so they have a set of wheels, and she came over, we had brunch, or maybe we saved to have the brunch afterwards, but we drove over to you, and it was a sunny day. You were sitting on your steps in the sunshine. We did
It was all in lockdown. You were not allowed to come into my house. So, you know, we had agreed it was going to be a handover over the front gate.
That's it.
It was all in the midst of lockdown. Like, you know, we were like barely allowed to interact. So we had this whole outside handover.
Outside handover, you know, the passing of the sacred art, and which kind of felt quite lovely for it to be out in the open, and, you know, socially distanced acceptabilities and all of that. And you had asked, you know, do you want to see the painting before? Like, no, it felt really important for me, and you had it wrapped in a turquoise colored sheet. Felt really important for me so we put it in the boot of my sister's car, wrapped up, and then did this unveiling when it came in. And I loved also the point that you've already alluded to about this non-directional idea. And funnily enough, I did play around, which was your counsel, you know, play around, you know, have a few days with it this way, that way, and so I did. So it would have been up as we see it on the screen now. And then, you know, the world works in mysterious ways. I was just sitting on my my sofa one evening, and the painting just popped off the wall. So, okay, you don't like that direction, or you're asking to be put in a different perspective. And I hadn't expected, I really thought that I was going to keep it lengthways, but as soon as I put it this way, I'm like, no, and sat with it for a few days, like, that's actually, you know, gaze adoringly at it each morning to come in and, oh, hello. And we also have the character of the chameleon in the boat with me.
Yeah, here, like sitting on your hand. So like you're holding hands and he sits on your arm.
Yes, which is a big ally for me. I grew up in Zambia, and had an experience with a chameleon in real life in our garden when I was probably only about 8 years old. And I can really remember having that experience with it. And yeah, so it feels that, again, it's that adaptability, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And also, while I was working on the painting, there was a very strong sense, because beluga whales are also white animals, and white animals are sometimes seen as special animals by First Nations or indigenous tribal peoples. And while working on your painting, I had the strongest sense that the beluga whales were coming to bring your donor home to his place in the spirit world, that there was a home waiting for him, and that there were ancestors waiting for him, and that there was this homecoming being prepared, and that the beluga whales were like the psychopomps, or the soul conductors. And that's also why his hand is like on one of the beluga whales, and that's why the chameleon is there as well. It's that, you know, like that in the painting, he's still in the boat, but he's also making his journey into the other world, as his gift to you helps you make your journey in this life. And it felt really important. That's also why you're holding hands. That's the exact midpoint of the painting. And kind of, it's that, you know, that sacred gift. And that's, you know, a kind of like exchange that happens there. That is the whole idea behind the painting. Because your idea was also really that you wanted to honor the donor, that, you know, you're very much aware. You don't just like receive a person's kidney without feeling that you know, they become part of your life and your body as well. So that whole idea of that, in some ways, he is forever with you. He's giving you the gift of life, that very much had to be honored. So, and I think that's why you asked to have him in the boat with you. But then also these animal spirits came forward and, you know, started getting more of a feeling for what was unfolding there. But the other thing that was interesting, that of course you would not have known like what he looked like, and you know, you certainly wouldn't have been able to tell me. And that felt quite sort of, you know, like if he is to be in a boat, he is to have an appearance. So I have to sail by spirit-led intuition here and put him up for a moment. And when I started painting him, this is how he came out. I have no idea if that is accurate. I'm not claiming that. We don't know that, but this is how he appeared.
Yeah, which is amazing. And I love also that he's wearing a green jumper, you know, the heart chakra, the color that is in resonance with the heart, from the more esoteric perspective is green, and how, you know, greens and blues are very calming. And for me, in the health of my nervous system, it does feel that just this creating this oceanic space and then having this very sacred piece of art in the space with me, it's very expansive, it's very supportive, it's very tender, and it's a reminder, you know, what do we really know, and what is it to embody our own kidneys, let alone another kidney. So, you know, I still have the first kidney transplant that I got back in 1997, which interestingly was also a man, but he passed with a brain aneurysm. So it's, and I felt a lot more of a parental, like that he was, because he was a bit older than me. He's 21. It would be quite rare to have a younger donor than you when you're that young already. But he was still only early 30s when he passed. So these are really young men that have passed.
Yeah, both young men, really.
Yeah, and given me such perspective, such humanity, such humility, that, you know, it's not plain sailing, as we know.
No, it's not plain sailing, but from you know, if you look at it on the kind of shamanic spiritual level, like one teaching is that we talked about the inner physician, but that every organ in our own body also has its own soul, as it were, or its own spirit. You know, it like exists as a being in its own right, which is why we can communicate with it. I know that, you know, I wanted some breast cancer investigations. Clearly, thankfully, you know, all was clear. But you know, I did a lot of work where I was like journeying to what I found in my own breast, and there was something that needed clearing up, and I really sort of, you know, used my imagination to work with that. But also having the awareness, again, from a spiritual level, that, you know, what comes in is not only a kidney, but also with that kidney may just come, you know, certain memories, like, you know, all the years that kidney has been in another body. So it seems entirely possible to me that that would like come out in your dreams, and also that that kidney has its own sort of spirit. And that's where, again, on a spiritual level, I then feel receiving the kidney on a medical level, from my point of view, is not enough. That's really important that that's medically done completely correctly and competently, all the, you know, all the protocols around that. And you know, there's a lot of, you know, you have to circumvent the immune system and all of it. So it's very, very complex. But I think there's also another level where, you know, how do you say, that kidney needs to be helped to say goodbye to the body it used to be in, because that kidney is undergoing a shock and a transition, and then it needs to be welcomed in this body. In your case, that is your body. And then there is that sort of dialogue, because it's now become part of you, but it's also still something other, because it came to you with its own history. So spiritually, shamanically speaking, like, we would do work on that. And I felt that making this painting for you was doing that work in the realm of art. It's also sort of, in a very real way, is doing a piece of work for the kidney and for its, you know, its watery role, and helping it settle in your body. And that's what I love about this holistic way of working, that the work's being done on all levels. And, you know, I love working that way, and I love being asked to do that for you.
Yeah, it is. It's so precious, and it's also so layered that, you know, I hadn't, until you mentioned that a few moments ago, that the holding hands is the center point of the painting. I hadn't actually made that connection, but now that you've said it, it's like it's the heart of the painting. Connection is at the heart, and the left hand, you know, is that which receives. The right hand is that which gives, and so we're both allowing us to receive each other. That from a soul contract perspective, that with both my donors, that there was on some level, and we can't rationalize this stuff, that there was some level of agreement to come in and support in this way, which is really incredible. And for me, you know, I find that very beneficial to consider things holistically, which of course includes the spirituality of our existence. And you know, we're not designed to be dry, ossified husks of humans full of cynicism. We are by design very lubricated, you know, all the rivers and streams of fluids that run inside of us. And that's why, you know, I love in my chart astrologically, I have a lot of fire. And there's, you know, to have this balancing effect of water. And it's interesting, you know, perhaps too much fire, that my own kidneys at 14 is just like, we're going to have a rest now, because you got to learn how to contain your fire or whatever. Yeah. Whoever knows what the deeper messages are.
Yeah, because that's ever more layers. That work is never done. You can like do that work and it will be one layer. You know, you work really hard, it will be a layer or a constellation of meaning and significance that you unearth or excavate. But if you go back to it and work some more, you will tap into another layer. So there's always a new constellation of meaning. And what I also love about this more, because, you know, when we do shamanic work, we do holistic work, but it's really, there is no area of your life that's not involved. We've already talked about your body, about your lounge. We've talked about like, how the painting set on my easel. And my husband sits in his water in the bath and looks at the first painting. And that all of these things are like constellations. They're like circles full of meanings. And they're like these interconnecting circles. And for me, that's a pretty good vignette or symbol for how reality works. Reality, to my mind, is not linear. And there's never just one explanation for anything. It's more like we work in this way where we're open to all of these possibilities. We have a very rich collection of meanings, and they all make sense on their own level.
Yeah, and to surrender to that process, because it's not, you know, well, you know, where the egoic mind will struggle or rage against these things, that there is, you know, where can we land in safe harbor within ourselves and keep remembering it doesn't mean that we don't experience suffering, pain, grief, loss, angst. You know, this is all a normal part of being human, but thank goodness we're able to open up our vista and embrace a wider perspective, to your point of the circles and where they intersect.
Yeah, exactly. A bit like Venn diagrams, I guess. I'm not a magician, but that's what I guess they're called in math. So yeah, absolutely. I have another question for you, because I'm aware that, you know, you were really young when you were diagnosed with your kidney disorder. I know there are other young people out there, you know, who struggle, you know, with dialysis or with the same, you know, medical checks and concerns. As someone who's a bit further along now in navigating these waters, what would you say to, well, anyone really, but especially young people, say people under the age of 21 who are living with kidney issues?
It's so important for people to find ways to just nurture themselves. So to be very gentle and to trust that even seeing somebody who's kind of gone through a longer navigation, because I'm in my 40s now, and you know, it didn't hold me back. So just, if you are in that situation of feeling very lost or feeling hopeless, that it would be perfectly normal to have moments of feeling that way, but there's so much that you can tap into, that even if it's just about recognizing what the relationship is with your own breath, that this is the beauty of breath, is that it's universal. There's no social inequity, there's no racial injustice around breath, and it's free and it's inside of us, and it gives us that immediacy, but also the profound mystery. So it could just be just to breathe into the parts of you that feel broken or wounded, and to reclaim them, and to put in your vision what it is you want to do. And sometimes it's very, very small things. I was very fortunate, I was on dialysis for 7 years, from 14 to 21. I still, I played on the tennis team at school. I loved dancing. It didn't really stop me from doing anything. And that was just, so just share that, because it's possible. Everyone's different. Everyone's situation is different. Everyone's family dynamic is different. But it's just, where can you find those places and spaces in yourself, and just build from there. That even if it starts with, okay, everything's okay in my little toe, great, like go into your little toe and see how that can then perfuse into other parts of you. Because it's just that crack of light, and then okay, the light can grow bigger and radiate, and that is your inner light, your inner physician, your inner awakening, which is always ongoing. And to also not be afraid to talk about it. I mean, that's certainly not something that I did a lot, but I had parents who allowed me to be who I was, because it was just like, I'm just getting on with it. I don't want a drama. I'm not interested in that. But to just be interested. And I think in this day and age that we are a lot more emotionally open. It doesn't mean that it's easier. I can't make those assumptions for younger generations, but to find at least somebody that's an ally, that you can talk about how you're feeling in safe space, not being judged or shamed or interrupted, that just to be held in your humanity.
Yeah, and the quality of deep listening, that's a good one, isn't it? Yeah, find people with whom you can practice deep listening. So you really see them on the level of soul, and they see you on the level of soul. I think it's a wonderful tool. I like it, can apply at any age, like people can do that at any age. So also that idea that there is always more, there are more options and more tools than we think. Because I would also say, as well as the inner physician, which is, I absolutely believe in my own inner physician, but we do also have the spirit allies, and you can see them here in this painting. And again, some young people are spiritually minded and others are not, and that is like completely fine. So not to foist anything on anyone. But for the young people that I have worked with in my natural born shamans work, and I can link to a book in the show notes, I have found that spirit allies, so are like friends and supporters in the other world, can be a tremendous help. And also they can be put on certain tasks. They can be called on when key events occur, such as exams or a medical procedure, or if difficulties occur in a friendship, or if there's bullying or whatever it may be. So as I said, it will be for some and not for others. And the way that is done will depend on your faith and your belief system. For young people who are Christian, then, you may be looking at guardian angels, for instance. So it's not like for me to tell other people what that's going to be. But I would just like to make the point that just as we find these powerful beings within ourselves, such as the inner physician, or in my case, the inner crone, the inner elder, the inner bone mother, beings that I've been working with recently, we are always surrounded by a whole team. And, for instance, our ancestors are on that team as well. And, they may be in the world of spirit because they're not with us anymore. But that's not to say that their knowledge and wisdom isn't available to us. That's not to say that we cannot ask them to watch over us. So just to make the point that there is always more support and guidance available than often we think if we pass through the mainstream Western education system, right?
For sure. And I know in my life, the dreams that I've had, I dreamt of a brown bear a few years ago, really crying and very, very brokenhearted with all these humans screaming coming out of the dream lodge. And, you know, it was just that she was heartbroken that humans have lost their capacity to connect with their dreams. But they were just like scared because, oh no, it's a bear, run for your lives. And she was so heartbroken. And I can really remember that dream very potently. So it feels like the brown bear holding me is her. She already had appeared in my dreams. But on a more, you know, practical level for people who do find it difficult to connect with this kind of way of being, that we are a spirit having a human experience. But that, you know, I'll give a shout out to Kidney Beam, which is an initiative that sprouted from one amazing woman, Dr. Charlene Greenwood, who is just a lovely, lovely woman, and she's a renal physiotherapist at King's College Hospital in London, which is where I'm looked after, and have built, you know, quite a wonderful relationship with the team there now, which has been, you know, a lot of dismantling my own wounds around that. But it's basically this online wellbeing platform that is specifically for people impacted by kidney illness, whatever part of the situation you might be in, because, you know, kidneys are very complex. And but it's free. It's funded at the moment by Kidney Research UK, and it has the full backing of King's College London. And I run a weekly yoga class on there, and it's a really lovely group. There's also on-demand options if people felt attending live is, you know, some people find that overwhelming. And for me, you know, because I've had such a passion from a very young age for this holistic lens, having grown up in Zambia in a bountiful garden, having had a doctor who I now realize was very holistic in his approach, and my mother bringing down her wisdom from her granny of, you know, onion poultices at the back of the neck when you have a headache, for example, that's how I was raised. So it's not difficult for me to keep landing in those places, but I understand for people who haven't been raised in that way, this can be very, very difficult and challenging. So Kidney Beam, yeah, beamfeelgood.co.uk is the website. So it's just something that people can check out as a resource, and also for renal healthcare professionals. You know, there's something on there for those people too, because it's always a dynamic, isn't it? It's not them and us, which modern society is very good at pitting groups of people against one another, and this divisive attitude. So to collaborate is not easy. You know, to collaborate with ourselves is a starting point, and that's where if we're breathing with ourselves, if we're honoring our breath, we're more likely to be in that awakening, in that collaborative idea of loving ourselves, essentially, which we all, I don't want to assume we all do, but it can be very struggling to be vulnerable with ourselves.
It's a good reminder, and also those names and websites, UK, would you send them to me in an email, Kiera, and I'll just put them in the show notes. So people, you can just like look under this video, and
right,
they can click on any link they like. I think, you know, some really useful information there. People want to like explore that, or maybe, you know, attend a session and see how they get on.
Yeah.
So I think that's great. Okay, then I think we're coming up to closing time. Is there something I haven't asked, or a final comment you want to make, something that you'd hope to talk about that we have not got to, Kiera?
I'm just having a look, because, you know, I was just landing before we came onto the podcast, and just allowing myself to be in the, oh wow, this is so precious to be able to have a conversation like this. And I'm just having a little look. I think no, I think I have all the things there, my little notes, and just yes. But maybe a question for you, Imelda. How long have you been commissioning pieces like this?
I think for as long as I have been painting. I mean, I started art school immediately after secondary school. So I started art school in Amsterdam when I was 18. Was there for 4 years, came out at age 22. And I think just probably even that first year, and also then I would like make things, and we had an end of year show where all my paintings sold. So I was like the lucky one. I was the one who had no paintings left by the end of the degree show, because they had all gone. So that was like a nice confidence booster when you're 22 years old, and you know, you really know that you want to paint all of your life. And it's just gone from there. So, and I think my way of working has always been spirit-led. I've become far more aware of that as time went on. You know, at 22, I think I was sort of doing it, but I wouldn't have had the words for it. I was doing it. But then as time went on, and I did shamanic training and trained as an art therapist and so forth, you know, there was more, my ability to put into words what I was actually doing and what the operative processes were, you know, that understanding increased. But really, I have been making painting commissions for people, I think, since I was 22, and I'm now 54. So do the math, that's a few decades.
That's amazing. I hadn't realized that it was something that had just landed on day one, you know, and that I'm not surprised that your painting sold, but how wonderful to be affirmed in that way and to have then allowed yourself to follow that route. Because I mean, it has certainly brought me so much joy. I'm sure you've brought many others much joy. And you know, for people to feel that they can reach out, because often it's almost like, even for me, you know, we've both written books. I've only written one so far. You're well ahead of the book writing game than I am. But this, that people kind of feel like, oh, I won't reach out because, you know, maybe they're so busy, but you know, it's like, we love hearing from people. I do reach out. So to the point of if somebody's soul has been kind of corralled from this, to reach out to you.
But I think people have fears around that, Kiera. Like, oh, what if she makes something and don't like the end product? People probably like, oh, how expensive it is going to be? Can I afford it? Or like, oh, would she even have time to do it? I think people have a lot of fears. So what would you say to a person who says, well, you know, I would like to buy a painting, or also many people will just buy a painting that I have already made. Like I sold a very large amount of paintings. I did a whole lockdown series, and a lot of paintings in that series sold where people said that painting was made for me. And like, I didn't know it and they didn't know it, but they see the finished result and they say, that's the one I need to have on my wall. So that is far more of my trade actually than making personalized paintings. But, you know, sometimes also what people don't realize is like we've seen here, and can just bring up the previous painting again so people can share that. We focused on this now. Wait a moment. Let's just see. We can bring the first painting up so people can maybe see the difference better. Yeah, here it is again. So, so this was the starting point. This is up in our bathroom, but also saying that, and people often think, when I say to people like, you know, you can commission me to make a painting that is not identical, but similar to one you've seen. And very often people don't want that. They get hung up on, I want that particular painting. And if it has already sold, well, okay, that's a pity. But I would actually go as far as saying that the painting you received was better, because I think it has all of these constellations, circles again, of significance and meaning for you. So today, if I said, well, let's swap, you can have this painting and my bathroom, my husband can have your painting up in the bathroom, I don't think you would swap back, would you?
Absolutely, and you're right. I mean, when we look back, like for me, of course, my painting is the one that makes my heart sing. Like if I look back at this, but this needed to be the seed for me to see this idea of bears in a boat and being in a bear hug and floating on the ocean of the vastness of what it is to be a human floating in this continuum. But I would just say, you know, don't let fear be that which drives you. And I understand that that's easier said than done. I suppose for me and my personality, I'm very happy to, to express firstly, like I love this painting. And then for you, for the dialogue to develop, for the dialogue to develop. And how often is it that we get an artist with your level of understanding and spirituality and willingness to really engage and for me to really be seen and understood, yet also to surrender to the ultimate painter that is spirit. So I mean, it's just extraordinary. It's kind of, it puts me in the shivers, and anything in life that puts us in the shivers and the feels is like, we've got to explore that. We've got to follow that up. And I I can't imagine my space without this painting now, and that it's for me, it's so personal for me, and that is almost priceless. And of course there's the practicalities of cost and things like that, but this is a big canvas. And so when you shared the price, it was just like that, well, you know, this is a unique piece of art. It's a huge piece of art. It's something that, you know, I want with me throughout the rest of my lifetime, and will hopefully stay. You know, maybe even my niece Henny might have it one day in her older years hanging somewhere. So I don't just if it's something that you're curious about, to reach out, and that you wouldn't, I mean, I'm sure you wouldn't want to be inundated with these unique
no, it's like, no,
very precious, isn't it? It's very timely as well, all the time you would have spent on creating this.
Yeah, I think 2 weeks worth of evenings. I think I painted over a period of 2 weeks where I was working on it every evening for about 3 hours, to give you an idea of the amount of time.
Yeah, that's a lot of time.
But as you were also saying, and I'll just feed that back, is that there was a dialogue, like when here, now we have the polar bear again. You were earlier looking at the audience was looking at the spirit bear. So this is the polar bear. And, you know, like the polar bear wanted to be a spirit bear, and like there were some other bits and pieces on who's going to be in the boat. It's also to say that it's not just, oh, I just paint and people have to put up with it. I'm quite good. I give little updates, or I say, well, okay, that's where it's headed. I also ask questions about, you know, do people have favorite colors? Is there something that absolutely needs to be in? So I think as artists go, I think I'm fairly sensitive, you know, really try to tune in to where the other person is, and, you know, pay attention to that. But there's always the spirit adventure, as you could see in your painting. The moment you start creating it, it will have an indwelling spirit of its own. And it's like when you write a novel or a story, the moment you do that, the characters will have a mind of their own. And that also counts for what's in a painting. But at the end of the day, you know, I think your painting became better for the bits where the indwelling spirits like had their own idea about what was playing out there. I don't think if I had suppressed that and forced the painting to go another way, it would have been the painting it is today. So for me, that is spirit-led process. That is what sacred art is. It's kind of like always with painting under the great tutelage and supervision of these other world beings. Yeah.
Yes, beautifully put. Absolutely.
Hey, I shall click this down now. People had a chance to really see that. Okay, Kiera, I think that brings us to the end of the interview. I also just want to mention one other artist, because the idea to make this painting for me was sparked by, I saw an art print of a picture done by a Russian artist called Alexandra Dvornikova. And that was quite different. She had like a boat, and there was a woman in it with fly-jarred mushrooms, and then she had the beluga whales. But there was just something about the boat and the beluga whales that caught my attention. And also her work is really great. So I just want to give that a mention and sort of, you know, acknowledge how, you know, artists always inspire other artists, and like no man is an island. So just want to give her work a mention, invite people to check that out. So that brings me to the end of this recording. Thank you so much for making the time and for talking so freely about your process. And it's really nice that we can see the painting behind you, even when we don't do a screen share. Here it is behind you on the wall. So I think that's it for today, Kiera. Do you have a final word of wisdom for us?
Just, you know, keep awakening your inner physician, dive into your liquid streams inside, dive into your breath, and cultivate that willingness to fall in love with yourself, and to fall in love with what it is to really be alive. And thank you so much. I'm so grateful for this piece of art, and for the work that you share in the world, Imelda. I really honor and appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate your work too, and also thank you for that message. You know, our lounge can be a kelp forest if we want it to be. Like, anything is possible. Okay, we will be back with another guest next time. Thank you so much, Kiera Jones. And the information we mentioned will all go in show details. So until next time, thank you, Kiera. I will see you later, and I will come for that cup of tea. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.